Hello, ladies and germs. Hannah is joining me, or am I joined by her?
That's the same thing.
And we're going to talk about another childhood classic of ours, The Crow, the 1994 film based on the comic of the same name by James O'Barr and directed by Alex Proyas.
This film stars Brandon Lee in his most famous and, sadly, final film role as Eric Draven, who, actually, we will get into the plot details in a sec, but we are not kidding when we say that this one is a childhood classic. It had enough of an influence on me that at the age of 5, when one of my uncles asked what my favorite movie was, I said The Crow. Needless to say, that is not what he was expecting.
The film starts off with Ernie Hudson playing Detective Albrecht. This is definitely a far cry from his last job.
If there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
Albrecht is called to the scene of a brutal break-in, one in a long string of violent crimes and arson occurring on Devil's Night, or Halloween, and seems sadly unsurprised by the horrendous crime.
Devil's Night.
What's the count so far?
143 fires.
They're slacking off from last year.
3 hours to go, maybe they're just slow starters.
So it's like The Purge, or California.
The Crow is narrated by Sarah, played by Rochelle Davis, a young lady who is really close to the assault victim, named Shelley, and she meets Albrecht as Shelley is being wheeled from the building.
Where's Eric?
Just don't worry about it.
Tell him to take care of Sarah.
Look, how will you just lie back? Yeah, look, your sister, she's gonna be okay.
She's not my sister. Shelly just takes care of me. She's my friend. Her and Eric. We lied to her about Eric.
Knowing that the man Eric in question is dead, Albrecht decides that it is his duty to keep an eye out for Sarah. These two characters are pretty darn important. In a film filled with evil characters, dark, grungy, gritty environments, and lots of violence, they are the light that shines through, with Albrecht's effortless cool and Sarah's innocence giving us a hopeful reprieve from absolute misery. 1 year later, Eric Draven rises from the dead, somehow avoiding that whole pesky embalming process. Still ripped and handsome as ever, Draven follows the crow that was hanging around his grave and returns to the apartment he shared with Shelley, which triggers memories from the night Shelley was raped and murdered. During this time, Draven discovers that he has the power to heal. Fact, they didn't actually use crows in this film, but ravens. They're close enough related that I suppose they're interchangeable in the film.
After Draven reminisces about Shelley and the life they had together, he decides to get revenge against those who stole that life from them. He gears up by dressing as a goth, essentially, with the musical accompaniment of Burn by The Cure. Draven, in a super cool supernatural twist, is able to see through the eyes of his crow, seemingly his familiar, which enables him to easily hunt down the men who murdered Shelley. It's funny how people call him the Crow, but the comic and the film's namesake come from the bird that guides him. So many people miss that. Sarah's mom, Darla, is a drug addict and a waitress at a bar where Draven's murderers hang out. And as you can see, they're literally the worst human beings to ever walk the planet.
Here's to Devil's Night, my new favorite holiday.
You out of your mind, man.
Loaded, man. This one is. Which of you Motor City mother wants to bet me this one isn't? Fire it up! Fire it up! Fire it up!
Draven's first target is Tintin, a knife-happy criminal who doesn't know what he's getting himself into. After ridding the world of this monster in very fitting fashion,
Victims, aren't we all? Somebody stuck his blades in all his major organs in alphabetical order.
Draven goes to a pawn shop to find Shelley's engagement ring that Tintin had sold.
I'm looking for something in an engagement ring. Pawned here a year ago by a customer of yours named Tintin. He confided in me before he ran out of breath.
Going through this pawn shop angers Draven even more as he realizes that this pawn shop in particular was where Tintin pawned off all of his loot from his crimes. He finds Shelley's ring and demands to know where the rest of the gang is.
Now you're gonna tell me where to find the rest of Tintin's little party pal. Each one of these is a life you helped destroy. Your job will be to tell the rest of them that death is coming for them. Tell them Eric Draven sends his regards.
You're nothing but street grease, Eric! Street grease, you mother.
Is that gasoline I smell?
Draven runs into Officer Albrecht as the pawn shop is burning down behind him, and then saves Sarah from getting hit by a car, in both cases dropping hints about who he is.
You don't remember me.
What are you talking about?
How about Shelley? Do you remember Shelley Webster?
Webster's dead, my friend.
Like the coat?
You're the guy that murdered Tintin.
He was already dead. He died a year ago. The moment he touched her. They're all dead. They just don't know it yet.
It's more like surfing than skating. I wish the rain would stop just once.
It can't rain all the time.
Eric?
Talking aesthetics here, this film reminds me a lot of Dark City.
That shouldn't shock you. This film was made by Alex Proyas, who made Dark City. Proyas stated that Dark City was very early in his mind when he made The Crow, and he pointed out that both The Crow and Dark City are both in some ways about a man lost in a city, and cities at night are a fascination of his. Speaking of the aesthetics, the lighting in this film is very Blade Runner inspired, like a lot of movies in the 80s and early 90s. Especially here in the meeting room, office, place of Top Dollar, the crime boss and big baddie of the film. It reminds me at the end of Blade Runner where Deckard is going through the hotel with the flashing lights in the windows. You can see that in this scene here in The Crow. As stated before, The Crow is based on the comic book by James O'Barr, who wrote it to cope with a tragedy in his life. His girlfriend got hit by a drunk driver and wrote the comic as a way to cope and get out bad feelings. He illustrated the comic in a very deliberate fashion, and the film reflects that style. The visual aesthetic matches the black and white tone of the comic book, with the primary colors being black and white, and in the film, red.
When I drew the book, I drew it in storyboards, and I always intended it to be in black and white, with the flashback sequences in Technicolor. And Alex is pretty much doing exactly that. He's using filters and special optical effects to pretty much wash out all of the color to keep it a really bleak film. And then the flashbacks are going to be in this bright Technicolor, vibrant reds and yellows.
Right from the first meeting I had with Alex, we discussed removing greens and blues and really controlling the palette completely. So the rain and the steam help that a lot because they just bleach out whatever color's there. We've censored across the board any cold colors, any blues, greens or anything like that, and really tried to create a monochromatic palette with red. So in terms of color, the red is kind of the revenge.
The use of film versus digital really made a difference in keeping the grungy feel of the story and surroundings. For instance, as much as I love Blade Runner 2049, I wish they shot that movie on film to maintain some of the grit in certain scenes, especially in the junkyard and in the Las Vegas scenes.
Back to the film. Next, Draven finds Funboy, who is with Sarah's mom, getting high and freaky.
Here, fun boy. Stop me if you heard this one. Jesus Christ walks into a hotel. He hands the innkeeper 3 nails and he asks, "You put me up for the night?"
That's very sacrilegious, but also very funny. This is funny too.
The meek shall inherit the action.
Don't worry, he'll be back.
Does that hurt?
Something cool about Draven is his power of sight through touch. Whenever he puts his hand on someone, he gleans things about them which influences his actions. When he saves Sarah, he sees the happy times Sarah spent with Shelley and how close they were. When he touched Tintin and Funboy here, he sees the horrible things they did to Shelley. These horrific scenes are spliced in during these altercations and leave no room for hesitation or remorse from Draven. Or the audience, boy, are you glad these people are dead. After incapacitating Funboy, Draven drags him into the bathroom and then turns his attention on Darla. This is the scene I remember most, when Draven literally wrings the morphine out of Darla's arm and tells her to go home to her daughter.
Look, mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of all children. Do you understand? Morphine is bad for you. Your daughter is out there on the streets waiting for you.
Fun fact, there was an extended fight scene between Eric and Funboy that was deleted as Alex Proyas and Brandon Lee were not happy with how it turned out. It ultimately had to be removed anyway, as Eric taking damage in this scene ties into the Skull Cowboy, and his warning to Eric not to do anything outside his mission of revenge. More on the Skull Cowboy later. Top Dollar's #1 guy, played by Tony Todd, goes to find out why Gideon's pawn shop was burned to the ground and finds Funboy dead on the floor with a dozen morphine needles in his chest and Draven disappearing through the window.
I'm a ghost. I'm a shadow. I'm gone.
Draven then goes to Albrecht's house to have a heart-to-heart. Draven wants to know what happened to him and Shelley, specifically how they both died and why.
Oh, you took a 6-story swan dive out of a window. Shelley Webster held on for 30 hours in intensive care and the body finally just gave it up.
I saw her through your eyes. You stayed with her the whole time.
I was hoping she'd come out of it.
Why didn't you do something about it?
What do you think those people in that building, even the ones who signed the petition, would talk after what happened to you?
We, the undersigned tenants of 1929 Calderon Court Apartments. What is this, a petition?
Big kick-me sign for a very nice girl who found herself a cause and the cause got her killed.
She was fighting tenant eviction in that neighborhood?
Miss Shelley Webster and her nice rock and roll boyfriend, Eric Draven.
Gideon, the pawn shop owner, is taken back to Top Dollar to explain what happened to him and what his number one saw. After some coercion at sword point, he gives all the information Top Dollar needs, and they kill him anyway, with a quick stabby stab and a shotty shot.
I like to think of this film as a kind of rock opera, if that makes sense. There's lots of rock music, and the lead is a rock musician. In the comic, Eric was a handyman, but Eric being a rock musician in the film was Alex Proyas' touch, and he wanted the main soundtrack of the film to be rock music, with the score by Graham Revell being more incidental.
The next criminal on Draven's hit list is T-Bird, probably named for his sweet ride. Draven tells the man to drive and starts a car chase with the police, with his little crony Skank following close behind in a car that literally ran him over. They arrive at the docks and Draven duct tapes the guy into his explosive-filled car, and T-Bird, realizing who Draven is, admits that they needed to shut Shelley up because she wasn't going along with their tenant relocation program.
Yeah, I remember her. We needed to put some fear into that little lady. She wasn't going along with our tenant relocation program. Idiot boyfriend shows up and turns a simple sweep and clear into a total cluster. I know you. I know you. But you ain't you. You can't be you. We put you through the window. There ain't no coming back. We killed your dad. There ain't no coming back.
Without hesitation, Draven drives the explosive-laden car into the bay and blows it up, with the crony Skank looking on. Also, David Patrick Kelly here, known for his role as Luther in The Warriors, and of course, Sully in Commando.
Remember, Sally, when I promised to kill you last?
That's right, Major. You did.
I lied.
Auditioned for the role of Top Dollar, but that was already marked for Michael Wincott, so he took T-Bird's role and, well, he is appropriately scummy. Draven is not only sexy and brooding, but he's a skilled artist with gasoline too. Talk about concentration and planning. I mean, drawing the crow symbol with blood or something makes sense, but how did he do this? Albrecht is addressed by the head detective who wants to know who Albrecht is covering up for.
It's the third hit in your hood in 24 hours.
Name's T-Bird. Arson was his specialty. Looks like he zigged when he should have zagged.
You're holding out on me. I got a vigilante killer knocking off scumbags left and right. Gideon's blows all to hell, and you're having a chit-chat with some weirdo who winds up in T-Bird's car when it zigs instead of zags. Then you steal one of my case files from homicide, and you're saying this is just a fucking automobile accident? Welcome to the first day of the rest of your suspension.
Obviously, this guy has it out for him. How dare you treat Ernie Hudson that way? Sarah awakens to her mother, no longer in a drugged-up stupor, trying her hand at being a mom.
So what did you take to become Mother of the Year?
Oh, it wasn't drugs. Someone kind of woke me up.
Who?
Oh, it was nuts.
This surprises Sarah and piques her suspicion. She goes to Draven and Shelley's apartment to see if her suspicions are real or just in her head.
I knew it was you, even with the makeup. I remembered your song. You said, "Can't rain all the time." That is from your song, right?
Can't rain all the time.
Get so lonely all by myself. The hell with you. I thought you cared.
Sarah, do care.
We are reaching the end of Draven's revenge spree, so this is absolutely necessary.
Ooh, I shouldn't have done that. I wasn't finished.
We cut to Top Dollar's nightclub headquarters, and wow, this song sucks.
Yes, it sucks, but it really works well in the next scene. Top Dollar goes on a spiel about Devil's Night being appropriated and wants to up the ante. And they're all armed to the teeth because of Draven, who arrives and demand they hand over Skank. They refuse him, everyone opens fire. Well, we know what happens next. Let's go all John Woo on these criminals.
You're all going to die.
Seriously, where does all this debris and paper come from? And if they're going all John Woo, Where are the doves? That's what the scene is missing, doves. Anyway, moving on. Draven clears the room of all living people and finally goes after Skink, throwing him out the window to his death. A pathetic character gets a pathetic death. The police show up to try to arrest Draven, and we get a rooftop chase.
Lie down and spread your arms.
Thankfully, Albrecht appears and gives him a ride.
So many cops think they're giving away donuts. Shit. I knew you were gonna do that.
Top Dollar is discussing how to deal with Draven with his psychic? Girlfriend? Wise woman?
Actually, that's Top Dollar's voodoo practitioner. She seems to be, in a way, a replacement for the Skull Cowboy, and I'll get to that in a moment.
Essentially, Draven has a connection with his crow, which is his link between the land of the living and the land of the dead. If they kill the crow, they kill the man. Sarah is waiting for him at his grave, and they say their goodbyes.
I gave this to Shelley once. I think she'd like you to have it. This way you'll always remember her.
I'll never take it off.
That's very sweet and all, but we know it can't possibly end this easily. Sarah is immediately kidnapped by Top Dollar and his people, and they use her to lure Draven to an old church so they can kill his crow. You bastards. They really shot themselves in the foot here. He was literally going back to his grave, and then they did this. Idiots. Taking a break from the plot for just a sec, we need to discuss two things, and they actually do relate to each other. First, we have the elephant in the room, namely Brandon's death. When filming the execution scene, where the bad guys kill Eric and Shelley, Michael Massey, who plays Funboy, fired a .44 Magnum revolver at Lee as he walks into the room from about 12 to 15 feet away. The gun would fire dummy bullets in place of blanks, as they gave a more realistic feel than blanks. Instead of purchasing commercial dummy cartridges, the film's prop crew, hampered by time constraints, made their own by removing the bullets from actual rounds, dumping the powder charge, then reinserting the bullets. Then on the day of the shoot, the dummy bullets were exchanged with a primer charge and powder but no bullet. Unfortunately, the prop departments failed to check the gun properly, as apparently the firearms specialist was sent home early, and duties fell to the prop assistant, who was unaware of the rule of checking all firearms before and after handling. A bullet from a dummy round was trapped in the barrel, and when it fired, it flew at about the same force as the real bullet, striking Lee in the abdomen, mortally wounding him. He was rushed to the nearest hospital, but tragically passed away on March 31st, 1993. His death was ruled an accident due to negligence. Michael Massey was so traumatized by the incident, even though it was legitimately not his fault, he took a year off from acting, and all the way to his death in 2016, he never watched the finished film. With the support and approval of Brandon's mom and of his fiancée, Eliza Hutton, Alex Proyas finished the film with some script rewrites, adding a narration and having Lee's stunt double, Chad Stahelski, a prolific stuntman and director of the John Wick movies, film scenes using CG to put Brandon's face on.
The second thing that needs to be discussed is the Skull Cowboy. In the comic, he served as a kind of guide for Eric, telling him what he needed to do, what not to do, and communicated with Eric through visions. In the film, the Skull Cowboy was to be played by Michael Berryman of The Hills Have Eyes fame, and he's done a lot of other movies. Seriously, he's awesome. And they did shoot some footage with the Skull Cowboy talking to Eric when he comes out of the grave, and outside of the church before the final battle. Obviously, he never made it into the film, and there were several reasons why. The big reason given was due to Brandon Lee's death, as there were still some scenes to shoot between Eric and the cowboy. Now, that could be the major reason for removing the cowboy, but according to Alex Proyas in his commentary track on the Blu-ray, the first reason the Skull Cowboy was removed was because the makeup just didn't work. Alex was never happy with it, and the quality of the makeup was poor enough to where keeping the Skull Cowboy would have conflicted visually with the rest of the film. Secondly, he ultimately felt the Skull Cowboy wasn't needed, as he felt the audience would already get what is happening to Eric, and then apart from Top Dollar's sister lover explaining some of it in the car, Eric's powers didn't really need a ton of explanation. Sure, it would have been awesome to have the Skull Cowboy in the movie, but what we have works just fine. And just as the voodoo lady predicted, after shooting the crow, Draven is now mortal again. But the crow is not dead, only severely wounded. And just as the bro was setting up to deliver the final shot, Albrecht arrives, and he's freaking awesome.
Just came by to pay my respects, and here you are getting all shot up again. You're bleeding all over the place. I thought, you were invincible.
I was. I'm not anymore.
I love it when villains think that they can just take power from anything they want, like Voodoo Lady here, when she tries to take control of the crow so she can have, I don't know, some special powers or something, and he was having none of that.
This is all the power you ever had. Now it is mine.
Draven heads to the church roof for a final showdown with Top Dollar, who is mad at Draven for, I don't know, ruining his business or something? Daniel, thoughts?
I don't know, Hannah. I suppose he just wants to get rid of Eric to show the rest of the city who's boss. Or Top Dollar, as it were.
As Draven sits on the roof, exhausted and looking very defeated, Top Dollar can't resist monologuing.
You know, my daddy used to say, every man's got a devil, and you can't rest till you find him. What happened back there with you and your girlfriend? I cleared that building. Hell, nothing in this town happens without my say-so. So I'm sorry if I spoiled your wedding plans there, friend. You got a lot of spirit, son. I am gonna miss you.
To be fair, I appreciate the fact that Top Dollar is not a raving psychopath. There's a method to his madness, and his monologue at Draven is actually pretty good. But Draven, however much pain and agony he is in, is not backing down. Draven transfers the pain of what happened to Shelley to Top Dollar, which knocks him off the roof and to his death.
Stand back, there's been a terrible accident.
With this, Draven poofs away, leaving Sarah to wait with the wounded Albrecht until help arrives.
You helped me. What you kept in here saved me. Thanks.
Don't mention it. I'm meaning to come to church anyway.
Stay with him until help comes.
He does that a lot.
I wouldn't be surprised if Nolan didn't take a few notes from this movie. Finally, with his revenge complete, Draven returns to the gravesite and Shelley comes to get Draven and take him home.
Thanks. If the people we love are stolen from us, the way to have them live on is to never stop loving them. Buildings burn, people die, but real love is forever.
Aw, see, a love story!
The Crow is an awesome movie, and it has earned its cult status. There have been several sequels and even a television series, but absolutely none of them have been able to come close to this original film in terms of visual prowess and drama. There's been talks over the years of doing a remake, but I'm with Alex Proyas, Rochelle Davis, and numerous others in saying that a remake is not only unnecessary, but it's stupid, as the remake would only pale in comparison to the original film. Now, in general, I don't mind remakes. Hell, some remakes are among my favorite movies of all time, like Peter Jackson's King Kong and John Carpenter's The Thing. The thing is, no matter who plays Eric Draven, or whoever else is resurrected in the sequels and such, anyone who knows anything about movies, or even probably normies for that matter, will know that Brandon Lee owns this role, and will always continue to own it. The fact that no other installment has been able to capture the magic is, shall we say, proof of that. Now, some of this surely comes from the fact that Brandon died on set, but it is, as Roger Ebert put it, it's not without a sense of irony that the story involves a hero who returns from the dead, just as, in a sense, Lee has with the release of this film. And Brandon Lee clearly demonstrates in it that he might have become an action star had he lived. On top of that, this is just a well-made film created by people who really cared, and those are rare. And it could only have been brought to life by somebody like Alex Proyas, who followed The Crow, his directorial debut by the way, with his masterpiece Dark City. Watch the director's cut, that's the better version. I also recommend Knowing. Yeah, that's an imperfect movie, but it's an engaging thriller with a palpable atmosphere of dread, and it has Nicolas Cage. I mean, sure, he's made some mistakes in his career like I, Robot and Gods of Egypt, but I have no doubt he can rise again and make another film as good as The Crow.